Welcome to another amazing episode of Wellness Warriors. Today I have a very interesting guest. First of all, he's male, not female. But apart from that, he has a very interesting story. So Marcus Ellis and I met, I think we met at the Truth About Cancer several years ago, or maybe at another conference. And he had some interesting information when it came to helping people with their finances on a healing journey. We all know that evidence-based natural medicine is not cheap, that it costs money, and unfortunately, conventional and traditional insurances don't support you in that healing journey. So it can be a struggle for many people. Well, Marcus has a solution to that, and that's what he's going to be discussing today. So welcome, Marcus. Thanks for coming on our podcast and sharing this information with our audience.
Well, thank you, Dr. V, for having me.
So you've got an interesting story. So you were formerly a #1 agent in America selling, nonetheless, cancer insurance. And then something very interesting happened to you. Tell us how this journey began for you.
I guess very interesting is an understatement. And again, thank you for having me on. This is really a pleasure to be with you. Yes, we met at the Truth About Cancer and some of the other large conferences. And I've always been impressed by your integrity of your mission and the fact that you really are dealing with an issue that a lot of people don't want to deal with. And I can say this from we can go at it from the point of view of what happened from my insurance situation, but I will back up and tell your audience that basically I am a terminal cancer conqueror after the failure of oncology. So I think it really helps your audience to know that I'm 100% allied with integrative naturopathic directions because after I was diagnosed with cancer, stage 4 cancer, when I went into Vanderbilt. And at the point that I was diagnosed, that very month, my name hangs on a wall plaque at the corporate headquarters in Cleveland, where I was the #1 man in America for my company selling cancer policies. And it was a very unusual moment. I went in and these people, I had lost 60 pounds or 50 pounds in 6 weeks. And I was just a shell of myself. And my family said, "You're not going to die on our watch." So they took me in. I had a family friend drive me over to Vanderbilt. I wasn't even capable of driving by that point.
I mean, were you aware? I mean, you weren't aware that you had cancer at that time? No.
What happened was I've always enjoyed working out. And so I went to work out in that morning where I was stationed for the week of my business. And the hotel had a little gym and they had a new rowing machine, and I hadn't seen a rowing machine in a decade. So I thought, gee, this is beautiful. So I used the rowing machine that morning, and by the time I retired to my room at the end of the business day, I went to lie down on the bed, and something, as I just put my paw down on the table, something broke in my left-hand side, and I couldn't move. And so I didn't know what it was, but I thought it was a sports injury. So I went. I was never much of a allopathic medicine guy in the first place because of my background, but I literally went to all my naturopathic folks and they said, "Yeah, man, probably sports injury." They listened to what I said and they diagnosed me from my own diagnosis. Nothing got better. 6 months into this, my spleen burst, and it was 5 times the size. Your spleen is about the size of your fist, and so mine was about 5 times that size. So it was constricting all of my colon, and I couldn't eat anything. So I kind of developed this mindset that every time I eat something, I'm going to be punished for eating. And mentally, I didn't think about it, but I just kind of shut down and I stopped eating. I lost all that weight. And then my family took me into Vandy and they said, "Hey, Mr. Ellis, you've got cancer." And I was so far out of it mentally that I laughed. I said, no. I sell cancer policies. I don't have cancer. And they didn't laugh.
What kind of cancer were you diagnosed with?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4.
Okay.
Of the spleen. So I went immediately, I didn't know any better at that point. I went immediately into the treatment programs. And it was the chemo, the radiation, all this kind of stuff. And, The diagnostic tools that I had were even causing cancer. Nobody knows this, which is why I'm steadfastly against mammograms. That's just me talking. It's not you.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see people exacerbate their problems by having diagnostic tools that cause cancer. I figured out what a PET scan was. So during the course of my treatments there, I took 6 months, or I'm sorry, most of a year. I took the treatments from the allopathic people, the oncology, and it was terrible. The side effects were horrific. I think the word side effects is a euphemism for the fact that they will not take responsibility for what they're doing to me. And they're going to say, well, whatever happens to you happens to you. We, just a side effect is a side effect. That's a lie. It's a fraud. And the reason I say that is because they know, every one of those people in oncology knows that every drug that they give has a side effect. In fact, I've sat in on meetings where these people, the oncologists, are saying, we know all the drugs have a side effect. And in the same voice, they say, and first we will do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
So they use that old oath, but then they immediately go in and they know, they said every drug known to man has side effects. Well, I call it collateral damage, Dr. V, because I don't call it side effects. It's direct effects of what was done to me. As a former gymnast, I had no problem physically. I was a guy that, constantly on the run, marching band president, cheerleader, all this kind of stuff. Literally, I worked myself crazy for years to provide for my family. And I never had these things, but they gave me head to toe collateral damage. And of course, I lost all my hair, which is why I grow a beard today, because I can. And of course, they gave me so many problems. Chemo brain is one of them, which you know about. Bone loss and gum loss in my teeth. I had to have dental surgery. They gave me pulmonary embolisms in my lungs, 3 of them. Then they gave me a heart attack, alleged heart attack. So I was taken in for, an overnight stay in the cardiac unit. It was the horrific experience. And also neuropathy in my feet, arthritis in my hips, and other things too numerous to mention. So I have head to toe collateral damage. I'm not playing their games. I don't have to. And what I want you to know, and your guests to know, I've never spent a lot of time on your website, but I have a feeling that your guests will understand more of what I'm saying. The causes of all these problems are worse than the original cause. I thought I was dying from the cancer. But when you looked at it, I was dying from all of these side effects, and I didn't even know it. So what happened was my family took me, I couldn't climb the stairs, Mr. Gymnast kind of guy, couldn't climb the stairs. So they brought my bedroom down to the first floor library. And I'm a 3rd generation teacher, so we have a massive library. And there's a whole section on Aramaic and on Hebrew and on naturopathic cures. So if I could get my head off the bed, which was rare, I literally went about studying as much as I could on what my condition was and what I could do about it. And I have several wonderful books there. So I was all, big section. And I was, I would begin by thinking about these things and then go into oncology and start asking questions. Now, I wasn't being mean. I didn't know what to think. You're in the middle of this journey where you don't know what the end zone is. And all they talk about are treatments. They never talk to me about the word cure or the word heal. Those are 2 of my favorite words. All they talked to me about was treatments. And I kept thinking, treatments? Well, that's a euphemism for dollars, dollar signs. Because they know that once you're into the system, you're going to need their help, because they're going to give you an issue that will provide them another avenue of income. And another avenue. And to your listeners, it was around $400,000 that I spent in conventional oncology. And I went through that whole period of most of a year. And at the end of it, I thought I was done with the treatments. I said, bye-bye. And lo and behold, I got a call on a Friday night when my daughter is at the marching band she's on the control tower. She's actually a conductor for the marching band. And literally she was on the tower and they called me at 7:30 at night and said, we got some bad news. I'm like on a Friday night surrounded by the bands and the flags and the screaming fans and the lights and the, football team and cheerleaders and all this. And I got this call from oncology and I knew I needed to take the call. So I said, hello. He said, yeah, this is my oncologist. And he said, I've got some bad news for you. And I said, what? he said, we didn't get it all. And this is, it's just craziness to me. I said, what does that mean? And the oncologist said to me, you need to take more chemo, radiation, stem cell transplant, or there's possibilities of what we call experimental treatments. And don't worry about a thing, I've got it already set up for you. To which I said, what if I don't do any of that? And he said, in a godlike pronouncement, he said, well, I'll give you 6 months. Now, that in itself is wrong.
Exactly.
There's no man or woman that should give you a death sentence like that. And I will be frank, after my years of research now, I realize that most people succumb to the death sentence because they think that's as long as I have.
It imprints the subconscious mind with fear. And most people who don't step out of that box buy into it. My father bought into it. 6 weeks pronouncement, he was dead to the day. And we hear that a lot. So we know, doctors doom and gloom. They don't have the right. And that's all they know in their box of tools. They don't know anything outside the box that can change life and improve life and support healing.
So proud of you to say that. And by the way, their teeny weeny toolbox is those things I just mentioned.
Right.
Cut, burn, poison, and drug.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I was so turned off by that I developed this network of people during my time of illness. I just was researching. So I have beautiful books, and I looked up a nutritional biochemist in Florida. Speaking of your point about the exact date of your daddy, I'll tell you this. I had a couple of books of a nutritional biochemist in Florida, and I called him up and I said, can you help me? He said, I don't normally deal with terminal patients. But we got to talking and we became friendly. And he said, come on down. So I drove down to Florida, and he used state-of-the-art equipment that's 40 years ahead of the AMA, non-toxic, non-invasive, gave me a 35-page report and said, here's what your protocol is. So I came back here to Nashville.
Can we back up? What kind of equipment did he use? What kind of testing?
Well, I'll tell you the one item that stands out to me is a SKIO scanner.
Yeah. Okay.
It's from Hungary.
Yeah.
And I have one in my possession now, which is really very cool tool. But what happened was I got this protocol. So I came back here to Nashville, never saw the man again. And I did precisely what he told me to do. And it's about 16 things that I did. I have them hanging on my wall. But it's a combination of things. And don't think there's any silver bullet. One thing is going to do it. No. Right. The most important thing you got to do is come off the standard American diet in a heartbeat.
Right.
So, what I did was I did the protocol, and it's real interesting. I got a phone call back from oncology 6 months later, and they said, we want to do a follow-up. And I said, okay. And the young lady said, what day do you want? And I said, oh, how about March 17th? And she said, fine. She did not know that was the precise date of my death that I'd been given by oncology. Right, 17th of September, 17th of March. So I went in on that day. They did their Chem24 profiles, their blood work, their lab assessments, and all that stuff. And guess what they found?
Nothing.
No cancer. But I will tell you, the shocking moment was that no one in oncology asked me what I had done.
Right.
I walked out of there and no one even cared. The light bulbs went off, Dr. V. The explosions, it was like fireworks. What's wrong?
You should be happy. You should be asking me, what did you do so I can tell my other patients?
That's just dumb old me. And so what happened because of that, I really figured out some things. This is a racket. This is an industry. These people of cancer is a business model. It's not a disease. It's a business model. And all of these different diseases are reversible. Now I've come to find out, and I know how to help people, but no one knows this in the standard American Medical Association kind of thinking. So what happened was I was just shocked, and I thought to myself, wow, there's something really wrong. So I also had another light bulb moment, and you'll freak out about this. As the #1 guy in insurance selling from my company, I was shocked because after the failure of oncology, which was $400,000, I went naturopathically. It was under 25,000. So 25, 50,000. But I called up my insurance company and I made claims. My own insurance company denied me benefits, any benefits. I'm talking about they wouldn't even give me transportation. I drove down. They wouldn't give me lodging, the hotel, nothing. And I was like, what is wrong with this picture? I am selling policies for a company that will not help people when I know that the cures for cancer and all the diseases are already here. They're not going to do that. They're going to shove me into the arms of the small toolbox people that literally have no answers. And they admit it 24/7 with what I call the pink ribbon propaganda mirage by telling everybody, you've got to run for the cure, race for the cure, kayak for the cure, hope for the cure. Reality, Dr. V, is that scripture is very clear. If you read it at all, Revelation 22:2 says the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. In the book of Enoch, there's all kinds of stuff. But in Jeremiah 6:16, I'll tell you what really fascinated me during my sickness was I kept looking at scriptures. And 6:16 says, ask for the ancient paths and you will find shalom, or rest or peace for your souls. And I kept saying, Father, where's the peace? Where's the ancient paths? I know research that the American Medical Association is nothing like ancient. They're about 125 years old. And in order to make their monolithic monopoly of medicine today, they had to destroy all the naturopathic colleges, which was somewhere around 2,500 different schools at the beginning of the last century.
Yeah.
So it was in order to dethrone all those naturopathic thinking so that they could make everybody dependent on their drug companies. And these families own the drug companies. Yeah. So it's very nefarious. But at the point that I was telling you, I thought, wow, I can't sell policies to teachers, any more teachers, when I know I'm shoving them into the arms of the system that advertises 24/7 that they don't have the answers. So I'm like, okay, what do? I went that all the way up to the corporate headquarters, the president of the company, and everybody in between. And I asked them, I said, we've got to come up with a policy that gives a lump sum or something for people to go do what they want to do rather than what a treatment-based program was, which is the only way I got paid was if I took chemo or radiation, the stem cell transplant, or the morphine that I was hooked on, or any of these things. And, you know, I just said, I can't do that. We need to give them 25,000 or 50,000 or 100,000.
What was their reaction when you made that point?
Crickets. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So their money-making machine kept going. And I couldn't sell one more policy because integrity, Dr. V, means something to me.
Absolutely.
My life is based on integrity. So what I had to do was I had to get out of that company. And so I left. The senior vice president that was over me, he said, you know what you're doing? I said, no. He said, you're leaving about $100,000 easy on the table. They literally took my renewals and all of those things that they talk about, and they split them among themselves. And so I'm just kind of living testimony that this whole system, there's so many pieces of our country that I just call it the institutions are corrupt.
Yeah.
And so now I know from this experience that the healthcare is corrupt. There are many ways you can go about using naturopathic things that have good diagnostic tools. If you're smart, you know where to go. And then you know where to do with your all your protocols. And this is why I, salute you, because you're working with people to give them options. Do people all take the options? No, because it's an educated thing. If
Right.
they look at you like they look at me, sometimes they say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm just going to tell you something. I'm not what they call, what's that word that they use for people that are up in northern Michigan? You're talking about some lady, they call them, what's that testimonial that's, they blow off your testimony? Anecdotal. I'm not anecdotal. This is me. This is my life, just like it's your life. And so I'm very grateful to our Heavenly Father for every day. I know that what's going on in my life now is very special to Father. I got this day for a reason. And one of the big reasons was to be with you and to tell your people that I've discovered some financial resources. And there's one that you're kind of alluding to right now, and that's this thing what I call life settlements, or viatical settlements, some people call them. And I want your audience to know that this is something that's very hard to grasp the first time going around. They may need to hear this video a couple of times. Nobody understands this. Out of 100 people, maybe 5. Okay? The fact that if you own a life insurance policy, and roughly 60% of Americans do own one, the life insurance policy can be sold today while you're still alive.
Now, is that whole or term, or it doesn't matter?
And all of them. Whole, term, universal, FEGLI, group, I don't care. They're all possibilities. So what happens is I can take a life insurance policy, and I have a team of investors behind me that's very swift, very sharp at what they do. And integrity, again, means everything to me. But in 1911, the US Supreme Court ruled that all life insurance policies are chattel, which is a fancy word to say you bought it, you can sell it. It's yours, if you can find a market. Well, in the 30s, during the time of the Depression, 20s and 30s, there were men walking up and down with sandwich boards, big,
right,
whatever you call them.
advertisements, yeah.
Advertisements, I can buy a life insurance policy. Everybody knew in the 20s and 30s they could sell their life policies. So it's pretty common. And then what happened, that kind of fell out of favor during the war and nobody was talking about it. Next thing it came up was in the 80s and the 90s, when all the gay guys, the guys with AIDS, were desperate looking for monies to pay for their, AZT or whatever the high expensive drugs were at the moment. Right. And so some of the sharks were out there in the 80s and 70s, 80s, and some 90s. But the sharks went out there. They buy a man's $500,000 policy for $20,000, $50,000, and give them pennies on the dollars. I call them wolves in sheep's clothing, or sharks.
Right.
So what happened was, today, fast forward, now today it's a heavily regulated industry. There's nobody doing that at all. And literally,
regulated industry.
Oh, it's fantastic. It is regulated. So now that nobody's doing that, but the older accountants, I will do a side note, the older accountants and older attorneys will always have that, what they have a little bad taste in their mouth for the word viatical. Viatical is actually a Latin term, which means provisions along the way. So in ancient Rome, the men would all carry their provisions on their back because they traveled the Roman roads, and that was provisions along the way. So literally, I provide provisions along the way. So if you talk to an older accountant, sometimes they're going to go, it's got a bad reputation or whatever. They don't know that there's sophisticated governance of this now. And so what I can do, to be frank with you, people can sell their life policy for anywhere from 45% to 100% of their policy. I can give them those funds tax exempt if they're terminal, critical, or chronically ill, and they can use those funds any way they want. Okay? This is unheard of.
Okay, so let me back up here so we're clear. So somebody has $500,000 insurance policy, sure, and they come to you, Marcus, and they say, I'm stage 4 cancer. I need to go to Hope for Cancer, but I don't have the money. What's the process? What happens?
It's very, very quick. And let me tell you, I love this. I know what the dollars are for Hope for Cancer and all of these clinics, and most of America can't pay them right now. They just can't pay them. So this is like hidden treasure in your pocket. So what happens is they contact me, and please give them my contact information. I'm available.
We will, yeah.
And I talk all the time to people every day. What happens is they contact me and I talk about their policy, and then I refer them to my team. Now my team right behind me, Settlement Benefits. Settlement Benefits Association is what it is that I work with. They're my team. And they literally go into action. They take a look at your policy. They took a look at all the riders and all of the pieces of your policy that are in play. And they can refer their time. They'll refer you to our investor group behind them, but they'll take it over from there. The Settlement Benefits Association takes it over. And literally, we will buy the policy. Now, what happens is, and this is important for your people to know, they will no longer own the policy.
Right.
So they will no longer owe any more premiums. the client, but the client can use those funds to do things that I think are ingenious. Like, for instance, obviously they can take a medical vacation to go see Dr. Tony. They can also use it to pay off the mortgage, which is a huge stressor for middle America, all of America, basically, middle class. And then they could go, overseas. They could do it with, have some of these products that helped in my healing that are non-typical,
Right.
atypical. And they can do anything they want. They can give some of it to charities. They can give some of it to their heirs. They can divide it between their heirs, give somebody 25 grand, somebody 25 grand. And let me tell you, whatever they do, it's their money. So we have no interest in it.
Okay, so is there a, do they have to be at a certain stage in their health, or do they have to have a medical, a medical doctor stating that they're in this condition?
Well, best thing is if they have in this case, since we're talking about cancer mostly, yes, it's important. Let me say this way. The worse your stage, the more you're going to get. It sounds awful, but to be honest with you, anywhere from stage 1 to terminal, we'll take those policies and we will handle that from there. So yes, the diagnosis more than likely, will have to come from someone who has CAT scans or PET scans or has the ability of mammograms to do a standard oncology approach, because that's what the investors are looking for, but they don't have to take treatments. They don't have to take any more treatments. And they can be in the middle of a treatment program. They can be at the end of it. They can be at the start of it. And to be frank with you, I love this. I love what I do because I'm helping people to really plan their own futures. I've seen so many, Dr. V, that are alive today because of my work. And people cannot pay $39,000, most of us. And all of a sudden they're getting, for instance, let me tell you one little story quick. He's a guy and his wife there in California, and I won't say their names, but they're just lovely people. I meet so many lovely people, and more than likely, most people are pretty desperate to figure out their way out of the smoke screen, the mirage. And so what happened was this man had a $500,000 policy, but his wife had none, and she was the one with the cancer. So what our team did, we looked at his policy and literally found out that we could put a rider, a spousal rider on that policy. The spousal rider was created, and literally she got a policy for $500,000 or $600,000. And we literally bought her policy for $600,000, which was more than what his policy was in the beginning.
Even though she had cancer.
And she had no policy at all. So my team is very bright at this. We've been doing this for 20-something years.
Okay.
We know how to look at policies, and we know how to deal with your insurance companies. And I will be honest with you, Dr. V, insurance companies in the main are in this whole ballgame too. And we're talking life insurance policies, life insurance companies. I'll give you a little question. What's the largest building in most of the cities of America?
The largest building?
Think Transamerica.
Banks, insurance companies.
You named it.
Yeah.
The insurance companies like Transamerica in San Francisco, they're huge. They're these big buildings. Why? Because 90+% of Americans' life insurance policies are never cashed in.
Wow.
Big secret. No one wants you to know. Over 90% are never cashed in.
Never cashed in.
No, because, we can't find the beneficiary. They've moved. They've changed their name. They've gotten married. No one knows where to send the funds. So to be honest with you, it's a very good thing to have a team like my people behind you to help with the insurance companies, because insurance companies, of course, are in business to not pay.
Right.
So we're working against the system, which is okay, because they know when we're coming that we are going to own the policy and they are going to have to pay off. See, so that's kind of like we're working on behalf of the client.
Right.
So I have seen such integrity with my group, and I was allied with 3 or 4 other groups before this, since I've known you, but now I finally focused in on this one, and I absolutely love these guys. I never seen anybody come up with a policy out of thin air and literally pay the people more than their original policy was worth.
So let me ask you this, what's in it for you percentage-wise for your company? Obviously, there's a percentage that you make based on the funds that you get.
Well, let me just say this way, it varies all over the map, and I get a very teeny sliver. So it's because I have this background in terminal cancer, and I have a very, very big heart. And so I just talk to people day after day, and we go right together to settlement benefits. I have my guys call them, and it's a teeny weeny portion. I can't tell you that it's the same.
Well, I don't mean it's for you specifically, but so the company, the settlement benefits company, what's a typical percentage that they will draw from a policy?
Well, let me explain that in a little different way. Remember what I said was anywhere from 45 to 100% of the policy?
Correct.
Okay, in that difference, the face value of the policy, as we've talked about, 500,000, if the person has a, like a stage 1, they might get a $220,000 offer. Okay, and by the way, it's no obligation and there's no cost to my work. Okay, so what happens is they'll get that offer from us, and inside of that offer, there's going to be room for the policy holders. Let me just say this way, we would now be the policy holder. So if your policy is 500 and you're just at the beginning stages and you got $250,000 out of it, okay, that's the difference in there is where settlement benefits would get some funds. But it's cool for one other reason, and that is you and I both know there's a lot of Americans that are getting healed naturopathically.
Right.
But what they do is they use actuarial tables for the standard progression of these diseases, little knowing what I know, that I'm going to help them find you. And, your numbers are very different from actuarial numbers.
Of course.
This is something that I just say this way. They do run actuarial tables all the time to give you the investment that they would be willing to do. And as I said, 45 is on the very low side, but that would be a company, a person that has a policy that they're not really desperate right now. Right, they're just at the opening stages. I want to say this, even that's a big blessing, because to be frank with you, a lot of Americans have 2 policies or 3 policies. And here's what happens. They're not wise enough up here to know that they could sell one, stop making payments on that. A lot of Americans, do you know what they do? I found this to be shocking. They literally lapse their policies because they know they can't keep paying on them. So they let the policies lapse instead of realizing that that's hidden treasure in their pocket that they could get something for.
Wow.
So I've got to get this message out. Never let your policy lapse until you talk to me.
Absolutely. Okay?
Yeah, because you've got hidden treasure, and it says in the book of Isaiah in 45:3 that the treasures of darkness and hidden riches in secret places are what Father will give to us. And most people don't know that their life insurance policy is worth something today, now. And I'll give you another little thought. A lot of people want to buy insurance for their heirs. And I have to be frank with you, again, I call that death insurance. After you die, your heirs get the benefits. Life insurance should be about living. And so now the policies today, just so you know this, there's been a new generation of policies that are coming out. And today the policies have what they call ADBs or ABRs. They're accelerated benefit riders or accelerated death benefits. So those policies will have built-in cash availability. So my company will look at your policy and see that you already have one of those, and they will tell you, go right ahead and go get the accelerated death benefits, get them now, and then come back to us when you've got those monies in your pocket, and we'll buy the rest of the policy. See, it's a magical moment to have, I've got the ability to be healed, and I've got the ability to know where to go, and I've got the finances to pay for it.
Yeah, that's huge, huge. Yeah. Marcus, thank you so much for this information. This is amazing. Definitely we'll post all the links and your information. I mean, this can make literally the difference between life and death, because so many people, who need to go to clinics like Hope for Cancer and, just give up because they don't think that they can do it. So thank you
And two, you're exactly right. Now, I love this because if it's money that's keeping you from getting healed, that's a problem for me, because the American Medical Association ought to be about healing. And they ought to be about being able to pay that without some third-party insurance company being involved. And I just find the whole system fraudulent. It needs to be brought down to its knees, in my humble opinion, so we don't have pharmaceutical intervention. And those we're the only, United States and New Zealand are the only two countries in the world that allow advertisement to the public on the airwaves of pharmaceutical products. When's the last time you heard a pharmaceutical product that was advertised that said, and there's no side effects?
Right.
No. They have side effects that are so detailed, they can't read them all fast enough. They get somebody in a sotto voce saying, and you tell your doctor, Veronique, that you need Xarelto. Okay, well, I'm interested in this. One time when I had the blood clots, they told me that I needed to get Xarelto. This is their medical merry-go-round. They wanted me to go on blood thinners. They said, oh, well, you can have, Coumadin or warfarin. I said, because I'd already read about those. I said, what do you have that does not have those side effects? They said, oh, Xarelto. And I said, no, but my family is sitting in the room with me. What does my family say? The man said, you're going to die unless you take the blood thinners. Well, Coumadin and warfarin require you to go in every week. And I like these people, but not that well. So I decided I would take the Xarelto only over my fierce objections. I took it home. And at that time, the reason that I was going to take it was because they found out they'd give me blood clots on my lungs. And they said, you need to take the blood thinner to get the blood clots down. And, I resisted all the way home, and I got the prescription, but I never took it. Instead, by that time, I realized that the naturopathic things like nattokinase and serrapeptase will break down those blood clots.
Yeah.
So I took those two systematically, Japanese herbs. I took them systematically. The next time I went into oncology, they did their scanning. Guess what they said?
Oh, the Xarelto must have worked.
Said, yes, ma'am. The nurse practitioner came in and she said, well, oh no, the oncologist. He said, looks like the Xarelto did its job. And he whipped a piece of paper in my face, and it was the radiologist's report. And he said, pulmonary embolisms are resolved. And then he whipped it again. He said, so Xarelto did its job. And I sheepishly looked at the floor and I shook my head, and then I went, no. And he and I already had a little tense relationship because I asked too many questions. But he said, why? I said, I didn't take the Xarelto. And he said, what did you do? And I said, Japanese herbs. And so he wrote on my chart, patient refused treatment. This is their CYA. They'll put it on your chart that you refuse the treatments. And so later when it comes back to them, then they can say, well, you didn't do what we told you to. So the bottom line is this. I went in every single time I had all these, I'm telling you, it was horrible. I was sitting in that room with that port in my chest. Literally, they were draining this chemo into my chest. And everybody around me was in these beautiful chairs with these towers. And the nurses coming in hazmat suits, totally gloved, putting that in my chest. And I kept thinking, there's something wrong with this picture. All these people are turning green and gray and yellow, and they're losing all their hair. And this is called health care? I mean, and then I lost all my hair and had all these side effects. And I said, no, there's something wrong. So I asked a lot of questions, Veronique, and it was not happy making. Like any good attorney, I knew the answers to the questions before I asked them. So I asked questions like, tell me about the nutrition. What should I be eating? And the guy said, oh, it doesn't matter. Food has nothing to do with cancer.
Right. Yeah, we hear that all the time from our clients. I mean, it's unfortunate, as you know, the system is broken, and that's why we provide the services that we provide, and we give, offer people an alternative to the traditional and conventional medicine. So thank you so much for your time. Marcus, and we'll make sure to put all your information down, and hopefully some of our listeners will be in touch.
It's a joy to talk with you. Thank you for your time, Dr. V.
Thank you.